You can hear people talking, but you can't understand what they're saying. And that's where it gets confusing. And you start wondering, is it them or is it me? And this is exactly where people get stuck, because it feels like a volume problem, but turning things up doesn't fix it. And over time, conversations start to feel exhausting, especially in places like restaurants or group settings. So what's actually going on? Because in most cases, it has nothing to do with volume. It's something much more specific, and once you understand it, the entire problem starts to make sense. Section 1. The hearing test most people do at home. Before many people see an audiologist, they run their own little hearing test at home. They'll turn the TV down low, they'll listen for quiet sounds, they'll ask themselves, can I hear someone talking from another room? And if the answer is yes, they assume their hearing must be fine. But here's the problem. Hearing sound and understanding speech are not the same thing. In fact, they depend on two completely different parts of your hearing system. And that difference is where this entire problem begins. Section 2. Your ears hear sound, your brain understands speech. Your ears are responsible for detecting sound, but understanding speech is mostly the job of your brain. When someone talks, their voice contains hundreds of tiny sound details that your brain has to decode instantly. Your brain has to identify consonants, vowels, timing, pitch changes, subtle sound transitions between letters, and it has to do all of that in milliseconds. If those sound details arrive clearly, your brain has no problem understanding speech. But if some of those sound details are missing or distorted, your brain suddenly has to guess. And that's when people start saying things like, everyone sounds like they're mumbling. Section 3. The real culprit, high-frequency hearing loss. Most of the time when someone can hear people talking but can't understand the words. The issue is high-frequency hearing loss. High-frequency sounds carry many of the most important speech details, especially consonants like S, F, T, H, S, H, C, H, T, K. These sounds may not be loud, but they are critical for clarity. For example, without those sounds, these words start to sound very similar. Sat, fat, that, chat. And for many people, that's the moment they realize it wasn't that people were mumbling, it was that their brain was missing pieces of speech. Your brain uses those tiny sound differences to understand speech. When they disappear, speech doesn't disappear, it just becomes blurry. Section 4. Why voices still sound loud. This is the part that confuses most people. Even with hearing loss, voices can still sound loud enough. That's because the loudest parts of speech are in the lower frequencies. Those sounds often remain intact, so your brain still receives the rhythm of speech, the general tone of someone's voice, the volume of their voice, but it's missing many of the clarity sounds. So you hear speech happening, but the words don't come through clearly. Section 5. Restaurants. This is usually the moment people first notice something is wrong. You're sitting at a table, everyone else is laughing, and you're nodding along, even though you didn't catch half of what was said. Restaurants combine several things that make speech understanding harder. Multiple conversations, background music, clinking dishes, distance between speakers. When your brain is already missing some speech details, noise makes the situation much worse. This is why many people say, I hear fine one-on-one, but restaurants are impossible. That's one of the most classic signs of early hearing loss. Section 6. Why people often wait years. Another reason this problem is so common is that it develops very slowly. Hearing loss doesn't usually happen overnight. It happens gradually over years. Your brain adapts. You start filling in missing words using context. You start reading lips without realizing it. You begin positioning yourself closer to speakers. You ask people to repeat themselves just a little more often because these adjustments happen slowly. Many people don't realize how much clarity they've lost until someone else points it out. And this is where people often underestimate how much their hearing has changed, because your brain is very good at compensating until it can't. And that's usually when the frustration becomes noticeable. Section 7. What hearing aids actually fix? This is where hearing aids can make such a dramatic difference. Modern hearing aids don't just make sound louder. They restore the specific frequencies that speech clarity depends on, especially those high-frequency consonant sounds your brain has been missing. When those sounds are restored, speech stops sounding muffled. Words become distinct again, and your brain no longer has to work overtime trying to guess what people are saying. For many patients, it's the first time in years that conversations feel effortless again. Section 8, when you should get your hearing checked. If you've ever found yourself thinking, I can hear people talking, I just can't understand them, that's one of the strongest signs it's time to check your hearing, especially if you notice it in restaurants, group conversations, meetings, phone calls, or when someone speaks softly. A simple hearing test can quickly determine whether hearing loss is the cause, and if it is, the solution is often much simpler than people expect. If you can hear people talking but still can't understand them, that's not something you should ignore, because in most cases, it isn't about volume, it's about clarity, and that's exactly why it gets missed. A proper hearing evaluation can often quickly show what's happening, and more importantly, what can actually be done about it. Because once those missing sound details are restored, conversations don't just get louder, they become easier, less exhausting, and a lot more natural again.